Hello and welcome to the Empirical Training Podcast. You're joining Josh, Robbie, AJ, and Vaughan, each of us with experience in cybersecurity, looking to help share our knowledge and ultimately in these few episodes, understand how we got to where we are today, the journey that we took, and why we want to share the insights and experiences we've had to help other people get into the industry. And the focus is going to be all on Vaughan today. So Vaughan, give a little introduction.
Hi guys, my name is Vaughn. I'm currently SOC lead for a MSSP cybersecurity startup, mainly focused on AI. I've worked in the industry now for about 4 or 5 years for global MSSPs with customers across the globe, really doing all of your typical SOC actions. Started off as a level 1 SOC analyst, doing everything from instant triage to log analysis, instant response, threat hunting, threat analytic creation. And I've worked my way up step by step over the years up to the SOC lead position where I am now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely going to unpack all of that and those different steps and responsibilities he did and how he got to where he is today. But great to know where we're going to. That kind of 10 days later or 5 years earlier is what we're going to do right now.
Take us right back to the start, boy.
Yeah. So I guess my experience goes all the way back to, I'm going to out myself now as being a proper nerd, but my earliest introduction to the whole security sort of world is, as many people are when they're younger, I was an avid gamer. And one of the things I liked trying to do was to mod and hack the games that I played to try and get a bit of an advantage. So I can't remember which one it was, but like FIFA 11 or FIFA 12 pro clubs.
Oh, you were hacking them?
Yeah, so I had like some modding tools on my laptop, and I would take the save games of me and my friends, and I would edit our pros to be like max overall plus. So then we go into the games and just absolutely nail all the teams we were playing against. And that was probably my earliest introduction into modding and hacking and all that kind of stuff. Following on from that,
How old are you that point?
Maybe around 12 or 13, I think.
Wow.
Very much trying to get my hands on wherever I could, really. I was never afraid as a youngster to dabble and play about with different tools. Can probably say I downloaded a bunch of viruses on my grand's PC when I was a bit younger. But
that's a common way.
I think everybody did that. Were you using LimeWire?
LimeWire, everything. Yeah. Nowadays, obviously, if I had the same tools back then, hopefully I'd be able to remediate some of the viruses I downloaded. But who's to say?
Vaughan, I was a gamer, but I wasn't a scumbag. Did you realize? Did you realize that what you were doing at that point was actually hacking? Because these days they literally call them exploits, use the same language. But back then, I don't think it had the parallels weren't obvious.
It was just trying to one up the opponents. I'm a very, very competitive person at heart, coming from a background, all my family's competitive. I've played sports my whole life, football, rugby, and I guess my competitiveness also transcended into the gaming area I was in, and trying to just absolutely dominate and beat everyone I played against was part of it, and whatever means necessary, I guess, is part of that. Yeah, I would very much look at tips and tricks and exploits on YouTube. If I ever had a new game out, I'd be that person that's YouTubing, I don't know, like Modern Warfare 2 insert map here exploit. I would be that person that's doing like the elevator glitch on the.
You're the guy that made us not want to play Warzone and things like that anymore.
Yeah, that was me, unfortunately.
Warfare 2, COD 4, when they were flying around the map. That was you.
That was me. I was that scumbag.
How were you hacking FIFA then? Like, would you be able to go a couple of steps, and do you remember how you did that?
So it basically just started off with a lot of YouTubing, which is very similar to my day job now, YouTubing different things, trying to find information. So very much back then at that age, that was kind of my introduction to using the internet to find things that you're not supposed to, I guess, coming into that whole like OSINT realm now in the cybersecurity area. Using YouTube to find different tools and things that people are using to be able to do these sort of exploits and stuff. I come across some software. I can't remember. I tried to Google earlier what it was called just so I come in a bit more prepared, but I couldn't find it. I think it was called like Modulo or Modulus or something. It was like a blue GUI interface, and it had all the different games down the side. And what I would do is basically plug a USB into my PC, into my Xbox, sorry, copy across the game save, and then plug that into my computer and load the game save into the tool. Then you click some buttons and change some settings that would like up your ratings and all this sort of thing. But if anyone out there remembers what this tool is, knows what I'm talking about, please let me know. Because
comment down below if you are also a cheater at games.
But yeah, it was basically just loading this game save into a software tool really, and change, like it would have, you know, what's your shooting power and your shooting accuracy, and just cranking all those up to 99 essentially, and then plugging your save back into the Xbox. But so that was my earliest recollection of doing the modding sort of thing. I did dab a little bit in Modern Warfare 2 as well, but that was only on a local save. And this one, I was maybe about 14 or 15 at the time here. On the weekends, I would go and stay at my grand's house, and I would take my Xbox up, and I would just have all the time just to arse about. I can't remember whether she had internet or not back then. I think it was maybe broadband that isn't dial-up, which isn't very good. So I think a lot of my gaming was done on local offline. So what I would do is, on these Modern Warfare 2, if anyone remembers back then, you could create like an offline account, and you could rank that up on Modern Warfare 2, similar to online, but like if you played local, you could rank up through local. And what I would do is take that save, plug it into my laptop, but this Modulo tool, or whatever it was called, didn't actually work back then. But following some tutorials, what you would need to do is actually edit the hexadecimal values of the game save. So maybe at 14 or 15, I was getting experience with changing of hexadecimal values and all that sort of thing to hack some of these games. And it sounds very complicated, but it's pretty much, you know, you would search for a certain value, go in, change a 4 to an 8 or something, and then that would essentially put you as like 10th prestige with all the guns and skins and everything. So it isn't super intricate on the technicalities, but again, it's that experience and exposure to
Did you get
these
banned?
sort of terminologies. Because it was an offline save, I don't think it was trackable or traceable, I guess, but it was very much, you had to leave, I'm pretty sure you had to leave your Xbox on as well. So I think I was at my grand's for like a week or so, and my Xbox was on the whole time, so I was just arsing about with all these skins and stuff.
Yeah, I was got in a bit of a YouTube hole the other day, and getting into cheaters and modders and people, bots on MMOs or other games, and it's quite interesting to see the kind of parallels for what we do in cybersecurity. The kind of blue team versus red team, the guys who are hacking and breaking the game, and then the defensive people who are making sure they can keep tabs of them. But also the bit that really interests me was like, if we find a hacker or a cheater, maybe it's a better way to think of it, we don't ban them straight away, because we don't want them to know what we now know about it. And when they would ban certain things, like a really basic example is World of Warcraft, like Blizzard, when it first started, the bots would be walking a straight line to go to where they were going to go. So they just put a big rock in the way of where the bots were walking, and then they teleport in, and there'd be 20, 50 accounts all walking into the rock. And so great, ban them. But then they realize they get banned, and they try something else. They come up with a dynamic movement bit of code, and then they're able to walk around it. And that's exactly the same as how it is in the business world for hacking, right? We develop new techniques to catch stuff and stop people. They realize, back to the drawing board. Let's reinvent. Let's circumvent. Let's evade. So I can really see how that has gotten you. That's a great way to start. I didn't come across hex coding until my first analyst job.
Yeah. I was still confused as well for a while. Genuinely.
I think it's easy to notice that Vaughn is definitely the most technical out of us. He's the one that is creating the scripts. And we have a good diverse team, but if you've got really technical questions, then go to Vaughn.
Yeah, he's building out the labs for us as well, isn't he? Which is he's invaluable, indispensable. But so we've got 13, in your nan's house. Fast forward, was it always cybersecurity? Was it always?
It wasn't actually. Yeah, in my nan's basement with a hoodie on. No, it wasn't always cybersecurity because, well, I guess that kind of period of the modding and stuff, I can't remember any other experiences around specific ones that happened, but that pretty much persisted all the way through school, trying to do all these different things. There would be like bot lobbies and stuff. I wouldn't host them, but I'd be trying to join them and all that sort of stuff. But I always had a bit of a knack for IT. I remember some of my earliest recollections of computers and stuff. I had a bunch of old computers laying around the house. I would take them apart, look at all the motherboards and the transistors and all that sort of crap, just to try and understand what was going on with them. So there was always that, there was always that exposure and curiosity, I guess, around the hardware and the software of these sort of things. So it was only a natural progression for me, really, when I got into secondary school and high school to take these more IT related routes of study. Originally, for my A levels, which is after your compulsory education, stayed in school, picked up some A levels in my high school. Originally, I was doing physics, ICT, and maths, because at the time I wanted to be either an electrical or an aerospace engineer. So IT and cybersecurity was never the route that I was planning on going down. However, I think, as one of the boys mentioned, I think it was Robbie in his podcast, maths was absolutely solid, and I could not do it to save my life. It was so difficult. I really, really struggled. I like to think I'm pretty good at maths, but the A level was just too much for me. So what I ended up doing,
wasn't it, from school to the A level syllabus? It was crazy.
Yeah, the technical know-how of it and like all the different algebra and stuff was definitely a step up, and I don't think I mentally prepared myself for how much of a jump it was. So dropped that topic, dropped that subject, and ended up picking up computing instead. That was an option.
That's what I dropped.
Oh, you dropped computing?
Yeah, I just can't get my head around scripting. I'm not really that mathematical at all. I don't have that kind of brain to kind of see the problem or know what the problem is and then plan towards resolving it with code. And yeah, it was the path that I wanted to go down. I wish I could, but yeah. How did you find it?
But all cybersecurity analysts know how to script, don't they?
Yeah, of course. It's requirement to get into cybersecurity.
That's what I thought.
Well, I've been working in cybersecurity for nearly 9 years, and everybody out there, if you don't know how to code, you can actually get by without coding, because you've got people like Vaughn on your team that you can be like, "Can you code this for me?" And they're like, "Yeah, I can code that for you." And you're like, "Nice."
But I mean, you got ChatGPT for it now, right?
Oh yeah.
Been using that quite a bit.
Put in vulnerabilities into your code when the ChatGPT gets it wrong and you can't tell how.
You've got to be very careful with ChatGPT, because you still need to know what it's doing. You've got to hope that it's producing the right code, but yeah, again, you still need to review it.
I'm waiting for that kind of supply chain compromise for ChatGPT where it really gets everybody, but that's a whole topic for a whole nother podcast. And I'm not a scripter either, but I know how to interpret script, and that is a lot easier. You don't have to know the exact syntax. You just have to know the kind of general commands, the general logic of where things are going. So Vaughn can write up a script, and I can say, Vaughn, it's doing this and that and this. And then Vaughn could tell me to go write a script, and I wouldn't have a clue where to begin. So yeah, it's not just about leaning on people around you, but also its interpretation is probably more important when you're analyzing stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a great point, though. Knowing how to understand certain scripts and pieces of code is super important. Being a security analyst, you don't necessarily have to know how to do it, how to create it, but you have to know how to understand it, because you're going to come across multiple different versions of code when you're triaging specific security incidents. Like, then you'd be coming across like Windows PowerShell or, I don't know, some SQL based stuff. And yeah, it is important to understand the basic flow and parameters that exist.
Yeah, and the majority of coding languages are very, very similar as well in the way that they're structured, and similar to Josh has mentioned, like kind of the understanding of it is kind of like a pseudocode. Like they all kind of look to achieve the same sort of outcomes to a degree, or have similar principles, I guess. It's just the specific wording that they use between the languages is what differs really, but they all have the same foundations, understandably.
Yeah, we call them languages. I wonder if maybe a better word would be dialects for them, because it's still English, right? It's just that syntax and the logic flows that the different ones have. But so
just on that quickly before we move on, because I think this would be a good point. With the consultancy work that I'm doing now, I've got two boys that I'm helping out in the team, and one of them came to me and he said, what should I focus on now as a junior analyst? And I said, okay, we need to focus on what's in front of you now and what you can apply and what you can make use of. And they're going to be using Microsoft Sentinel soon. So I said, if you learn the principles and the framework of SQL, then you'll be able to pick up the KQL language that exists within Microsoft Azure, and because it's basically based around SQL. So yeah, like it's similar dialects. You can invest your time into one thing, and then you can transfer that skill of that language or dialect into multiple languages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also about making sure you do stuff that interests you as well. If you're having a real hard time because you've been head down in SQL or SQL, let's not debate that. Then, and you're finding it really difficult, you're at the end of your tether, move on to something else, try something, maybe come back to it. Or really, if you crack one thing really well, it will actually help you out laterally as well into some other pieces too. So don't kick yourself because you're struggling with one topic that somebody told you to learn. As long as you're constantly finding out new stuff that's relevant, then you're doing well. You're making progress.
And try and use it as well, because if you spend like 6, 8, 10 weeks learning Python scripting, and then you're not applying it in your daily workflow, or at least like a couple of times a week, then you'll lose that skill.
Yeah, and you got to prove it when that comes to job interviews or whatever. You can't say, oh yeah, I studied Python for this long, I've got these type of certs. They kind of, okay, what have you done with it? What's the little projects that you've done?
Yeah, that's what they're gonna ask.
Yeah, it can be super,
and you get people like Des who will like take a CV and look at a specific skill, and if you've listed that skill, he used to pull people's pants down and say, okay, what, you're an expert on this, are you? Right, break it down then. And they're like, oh no, I just listed it.
Yeah, you got to make sure anything that you put on your CV is something that you are not very capable, but you know enough about to be able to back it up. And especially with things like coding and scripting, it's good to say, oh, by the way, I created this script that could pull a list of IPs and it could do like a geolocation lookup on them. Then, for example, you've got an example for
and this is one of the reasons why we ask our community and say to our community and recommend that the practice with tools such as Security Onion, for example. If you're listing on your CV that you're proficient in using SIEM tools, for example, how does an employer know that you've maybe done a try hack me module and that's your own experience? Whereas if you can back up and prove that you've downloaded Security Onion and you've installed it and you've used the functionality of it, that's a much better way of conveying the skill that you actually have, and is a lot more credible to an employer and an interviewer at that stage.
Yeah, and that's something that I actually did for an interview for a job. I was setting up Security Onion, and the logs were being from the IDS, the intrusion detection system, were being pushed into Elastic, and then I was creating alerts in Elastic then, and it was very basic, but it was still experience that I used. And I was asked in my interview about SIEM technologies, that exact question, and I brought that experience. It was like, I haven't done it, I haven't built rules in my previous company, but I have done it at home, and then they can see the passion there, or they did see the passion, and it was just a good example that I was able to pull from. So yeah, definitely set up Security Onion. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there on how to set it up as well. It's something that we recommend to get the experience as a cybersecurity analyst.
Yeah, at some point it'd be good for one of us, or at least we could jump on a duo video and maybe do a bit of a tutorial of how to set it up, because I know that people will find value in that. So
yeah, definitely. If that's something you'd like, comment down below and let us know.
Beat me to it, Andy. Yeah.
comment Security Onion.
Yeah.
Onion emoji.
Onion emoji, yeah.
Or comment Shrek. But but let's carry on down your journey then. So we're at A-levels now. I know you were the only one who came through university with like a relevant degree. AJ, maybe yours is kind of relevant, but I think Vaughans is definitely takes the cake.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I would probably say that I had your traditional path into cybersecurity to a degree. If you was going to cookie cutter an approach in getting into cybersecurity, like degree wise, I would probably say I went down that path exactly, in all honesty. So yeah, with A-levels, then I ended up doing IT, computing, and then physics. Computing is pretty much what you expect. A lot of coding in there. talking a lot about CPUs and RAM and ROM and all that really foundational stuff about computer and hardware. And then IT was more your creating websites in things like Dreamweaver, which is a very early software to build websites, creating macros in Excel using like VBA code and all that sort of thing. Very foundational and entry level sort of skills that you're picking up in those A levels. But yeah, once I had those A levels under my belt, originally it wasn't. So I have a bachelor's in computer security, but that wasn't the original bachelor's that I actually went for. So originally I went in for computer science, so a more coding related one, because I definitely enjoyed coding and that whole computing module. I can't remember what I actually built for my A level, but it was a lot of Visual Basic coding in there, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I was like, yeah, computer science, that's me. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a programmer. Got to my university, sat the first week, and I was like, I'm not sure if I actually want to do this. I was also partially influenced by Mr. Robot, if anyone's seen that series.
Yeah. Superb. I watched that after I was an analyst.
Such a sick show, man.
I think you
if anyone
recommend
hasn't watched it, such a amazing show.
Well, before you moved on, what was the reason you didn't go down the aerospace engineering route that you mentioned?
Because I sucked at maths.
That was it.
That was a requirement, is it?
Yeah, to get into university, to do those degrees, you had to have math as an A level. And because I was so bad at math, I was like, all right. Yeah, I was like, right, I need a new dream, new bachelor's. What am I going to do? And I thought at the time I enjoyed coding. Apparently it pays well. I was like, all right, cool, that's me. And there wasn't much other thought other than that. But yeah, get into university then with the influence of Mr. Robot. Seeing, I think it was the first couple of episodes, using all the different hacking tools and stuff, that definitely piqued my interest, going back to the modern days and the hacking days of the hexadecimal, which is why I felt that story relevant to come in. Because that
should we just explain to people who don't know Mr. Robot really why it's so good? Because there's lots of hacking programs out there or films, but Mr. Robot actually, the person who wrote it, I forget the name. If we had our equivalent of what Joe Rogan has to put it up, that'd be great. But he wrote it for like 3 years in the past when he was writing it, so that all the hacks, all the techniques that Mr. Robot used are actual real life things that happened in real world breaches. And the Apache Struts was used. There was Sam Esmail, yeah, and there was like the MFA hack with the SMS that was used to try and transfer all the money at some point. Hopefully I'm not spoiling anything, but those are real techniques. It's not just a kind of smashing a keyboard. I'm in the mainframe. It actually maps exactly to the real world. So fair play to Mr. Robot for that. First time I really saw that in a bit of TV.
Yeah.
Do you know where the research came from that? Did he work in security, or they just did a lot of research?
I think he may have had advisors that maybe did pen testing or something when they were doing writing. But it's like, I think that whole theatrics of hacking is probably something like, as most people do, the watch these shows, they think, okay, like Josh has said, I'm hacking the mainframe. I've typed in 2 lines of code and I've compromised all the security cameras. That's not what actually happens in the real world.
It might have been a bit of a snowball effect, but it made it look really cool, didn't it?
But yeah, I think it was.
I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it did make it look really cool.
Yeah. And that's the thing with some films, they're trying to pique people's interest and be like, well, this is like, this can actually happen to us, like, 2 clicks. And I mean, technically some 0 days, you have like 0-click attacks with like iPhones, for example. Like they are a thing out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's something that the reality doesn't always live up to the expectation. When I first started my incident response role, I thought, look at these really complex hacks. I'm bricking it because it's gonna be so difficult. Some of it is people just leaving their firewall ports open so that anyone can RDP in without any real trouble. It's actually kind of unglamorous. People make this most obvious stupid mistakes, and that tends to give people that initial foothold. So slightly disappointing, but actually also it's slightly reassuring, right? That it isn't always the super glamorous attacks that you're dealing with on a regular basis. Sometimes it is as simple as they've left a virtual door open. Someone can just stroll right in.
Yeah,
I think,
and I think
number one attack vector of 2023 was just credential access, so just getting username and password. So often than not, it's not always
75% of all breaches were credential compromises.
I'm glad you had the stat. I couldn't remember how it was. Yeah, that's what it was. I read it the other day, but I knew there was a stat, but I just couldn't remember it.
Yeah. I use that one all the time. But so Vaughn, we're halfway through now, and we got your education. We're out of your nan's house, and we're out of your school. Where are we going?
Yeah, so switched over to computer security with the help of the lack of theatrics of Mr. Robot, essentially, and thinking, wow, this is really cool. Like I said, going back to those modern days, seeing the technicalities of how it's actually done definitely piqued my interest. I was like, okay, cool, this is definitely a route I want to go down. And with the computer security sort of route, it definitely delivered for me in that regard. A lot of the modules, there was a pen testing module. There was modules where you would build a PHP website and then secure it. So you're learning PHP code, you're learning C++ code, you're learning C# code, all the different programming languages, which I think helps my understanding of those programming languages now, my proficiency in them. But yeah, it was definitely scratching that itch that I had for these sort of things. And honestly, the earlier days of university were pretty boring because you're not going into all these super glamorous sort of Mr. Robot hacks and attacks. Is very much building that foundational understanding that we preach to our audience, essentially. Like, in order to get into the industry, you do need to have these foundations under you, unfortunately. And again, it's not super glamorous. It's not, the most interesting thing in the world, but it's a necessity because you're going to be making decisions based off this information. So if you don't fully understand it, then you may make a wrong decision. And working in a growing field, it can cost companies a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it can help just clarify some of those foundations as well. So in terms of the foundations, we're on about basic networking is usually where you want to start, then move from your networking into your basic cybersecurity, such as different types of attacks, how they happen, how to protect yourself personally from attacks, and then how to also to protect companies from attacks as well. But if you're completely basic, then you want to be going down like maybe the basic IT route and then going from there into networking. But if you have a good fundamental of IT, then you could start with basics of networking, get your basics of cybersecurity, and they kind of like build on top of each other each time. And then you'll need that when you get into the industry so that you understand. Because if you go into the SOC analyst role, mostly what you want to be looking for is reviewing incidents, which are usually a customer's potentially being attacked. What do I need to do to respond? Has it been successful? What do I need to do to mitigate that attack? And having those fundamentals is definitely the place you need to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said that they build on top of each other, EJ, and that's absolutely right. It's a lot like a puzzle. Like you find the new pieces that go in, and almost like a new section gets unlocked for you. Once you get your understanding in certain areas, so much more opens up that you can then learn. Which for me, being a curious person at heart is one of the reasons that I love cybersecurity, because there's so many areas that you can learn, and there's so many things to learn, and it definitely keeps you on your toes.
And you said at the beginning, being able to YouTube things like and just search on the internet for the answers is so empowering. It's not hidden in textbooks. It's not hidden in years and years of case laws or kind of safe gatekept by somebody. This stuff is out there for anybody to go and learn. And I'm not sure how many industries are really like that, right? You don't have to pay for a course to learn everything you need to learn.
Yeah, and I was going to say a common theme from people that I've worked with personally who have gone down the traditional route of going to uni and then getting that first job is they say that they learn more in the first like 3 to 4, 6 months of the role than they ever did at like 3 years of their uni degree. And that's because they're learning every single day and they're coming across different incidents that are relating to different like data sources or concepts, and they're having to think on their feet and like you said, chuck a quick Google search, chuck a quick YouTube search, or think, right at the end of the evening, or when I go home, I'm going to have to do some further research on this because I need to brush up on this topic area. It's funny, isn't it? You think for most jobs, you just need to go to college, go to uni, you learn that skill, and then you're set for life. And for this type of job, this industry, yeah, you're literally just beginning. You're always having to keep yourself relevant. There's always something new on the horizon, and yeah, it keeps it fresh though. Like I enjoy that. I enjoy the pressure of always having to learn different things.
Yeah, it's maybe almost embarrassing how many times I have to Google some fundamental computing thing that I knew at some point. So you have to refresh that knowledge too, right? It's not you talk about building on it, but yeah, you also have to go backwards sometimes to make sure that you can revisit those concepts. And so Vaughan, are we at the point where you are looking for your first job yet?
Yeah, almost. The only thing to add to what's been spoken about already is, it's the beauty of cybersecurity is that there's so much to learn. I did find that during university, I did get quite bored at times because the course was so stretched out. You were maybe learning 2 or 3 days a week. There were some modules that were interesting, some were not. So as Robbie's mentioned, once you get into the industry, that's when definitely my eyes open to how much there is to learn. And yeah, you're only scratching the surface in university just to get yourself through the door. But yeah, once graduating, I actually interviewed for a company, which is the company that we all ended up working at some point. Where we all met. So that was the first company that I interviewed for, and praise the Lord, I actually managed to land the first one, luckily. And I count myself very, very lucky for that. First one, I count myself very, very lucky for that. I know.
Oh, very nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah. Interview went pretty much how you'd expect. Tech questions. My first phone call interview actually happened while I was at a festival. So I was at a festival, a couple of pints deep, and then I had the phone call in to answer some tech questions, which was quite interesting.
Oh no, you did a test as well. It wasn't just a hey, how are you?
You did the test. It was festival. That is class.
You had your phone in one hand and then like a bottle of beer in the other, and you're like,
it's just like yeah. No, sorry, I'm just.
My nan's got a really loud CD player.
Yeah.
That's my data center whirring in the back. But I referred a friend of mine who was in uni, and he had the tech test during a festival as well. I was with him, and he did not what you did. He did terrible. And and he was a computer science person. I went back to them and said, "Hey, come on, he nearly knows. Look at his coursework." They're like, "Yeah, but he failed the tech test. If you fail the tech test, we can't progress you."
Yeah. Luckily, due to some miracle, maybe it was a couple of cans of confidence, I actually managed to pass the tech test, and then have my in-person interview. So going into the office, similar to the sort of test that we spoke about on AJ's introduction, a lot of written questions talking about firewalls, networking, different attack types. It would show you a section of code or something, and it would say, okay, what does this little bit of code do? Not to scare anyone, these are scored out of, 100 or so. It's not 100% to get in. Obviously, it's showing your experience and your understanding of certain elements of cybersecurity, essentially. One of the most important things that I took with me into those interviews was, if you don't know the answer straight away, just try and brain dump what you do know around that topic, just to try and give the written interviewer a bit of background of your knowledge. So if it's saying, so let's say, for example, it's an SQL attack or something's going on. If you can't figure out what's actually happening, just try and give some background around what knowledge you do have on that. It may be absolutely worthless and they may completely overlook it, or it could be the decider because they say, okay, this person knows how to apply himself. He's adding in information that he does understand. He obviously knows something. Maybe it's a spur of the moment that they've forgotten something. And hopefully that sort of mentality might just tip it in your favor.
Yeah, it's how do you approach a problem as well. They don't expect you to know absolutely everything, but they expect you to not freeze up, have a route to a solution. I think that's some of the best advice I ever got was It's from my father, and he was in a police interview years ago, and they asked him this really complex question: what would you do if this and that happened, like really high pressure riot or something? And he said, I'll do exactly what I'm going to do now, which is take a second to think about it. And that's a perfectly valid answer, right? Don't just blurt out what you can answer. Take a step, compose yourself, because that's what you're going to have to do in work as well. They're not looking for the quickest solution; they're looking for the right solution.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, and with the written tech test, typically they do come in 3 phases, but I think for whatever reason they are combined: the character test, character assessment, written test, just going in for the one interview. Again, like we've spoken about in previous podcasts, it's really, really important just to try and get across your personality. That's one of the main things I look for when I'm interviewing people. How well do you fit in the current team environment? Will you be able to gel well? What's your work ethic? What's your mentality like? All those sort of things. So I'd like to think that they were the sort of things I was just trying to get across in my interview. Mentioning collaboration, I mentioned at the start, I used to play a lot of team sports, so trying to play on that chord, talking about collaboration with different teams and community and all that sort of stuff. I'm just trying to position myself in the best way possible to get some sort of consideration, I guess.
What was it like when you first started then? Is your first job straight out of uni?
Very, very daunting.
Which role did you move into, just out of interest?
Yeah, so I moved into the log review role. So
so we all started from the same place then.
It wasn't quite the same though, was it? I think at that point, you were on the road towards automation, supervised machine learning.
So
save views.
I think when I joined,
what position were you in, Josh, at that time?
Josh was in the network security team at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We didn't.
I can remember when you joined, or at some point when you were starting working there, when I wasn't even there, because I was speaking with Dan about like how things were going, and he was singing your praises.
Oh, me?
No, Vaughn.
Yeah.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was Josh.
No, he was saying that, there's this guy Vaughn, he's joined. He's like saying to me, you'd really like him, Steely. He plays football, all this sort of stuff. And
I come in and
I'm really happy that he's here because he's a strong member, and he'd be like, he was basically saying that the only reason why he was staying at that time was because you were there.
That's very high praise, and shout out Dan. He took me under his wing when I first joined and made me into the analyst I was on that team. So thank you very much, Dan. But
shout out Danny Saurus if he's listening.
Yeah, absolute legend. But yeah, joined that team. Completely new, completely shitting myself. Didn't have a clue what was going on. Looking at all these log messages, trying to identify thresholds. Felt like I didn't know an absolute thing. I felt like the last 4 years of university were absolutely worthless. It was a massive reality shock coming in. But yeah, again, shout out Dan. Took me under his wing, was giving me all the information I needed, asking lots and lots of questions. So anyone that joins a company that feel like you're out of place and maybe having that imposter syndrome, I definitely went through it when I very first joined, not thinking that I was equipped to be there, didn't understand as much as the other people did. I think when you boys mentioned last time, AJ, I think it was you, it's not that you don't know it or that someone else doesn't know it, they just know something that you don't know. So
yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? It's just and I think that's why it's so important, like when you join a company, just ask as many questions, because I was the same when I first started. I felt like if I asked questions that they would figure out that I definitely am an imposter and I don't know what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, a lot of what goes on in the company is to do with company policies and how the actual company operates. So you need to ask questions about that so you can get skilled up in that. But then if there is something technical that you don't know, you're better off asking, because it's only going to make you better as the years go on. But it's interesting to see that you started in the log analysis team as well, because that is the roots of all 4 of us.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a hard job as well, wasn't it? It was the sieving through like massive lines of log data
cases,
and trying to find that needle in the haystack, and we had rules that were applied to those logs that would it wouldn't give us a notification, but it would
Just
put it
highlight
in
them as like escalation worthy potentially.
yeah, potentially escalation based on just a syntax alert. But yeah, that was very hard, very time consuming. I remember
monotonous.
Yeah, I remember getting to the very end of my tenure, and I was desperate to leave, because some days when it was busy and we were understaffed, we'd start work at 9, and sometimes I'd have to be really strategic to allow myself enough time to just nip to the toilet and like give myself a bit of a break, because so we had a certain amount of cases that we all had to work for the UK side, and then we had the US counterpart that would finish it off and work those cases in a 24-hour period. But it's all divided between the team members, and yeah, it was time was against us most days. Some days were easy because there was a lot of people in when we had the overlap, but on especially on those days where, say, like the Fridays and the Saturdays and the Sundays and the Mondays when there wasn't an overlap, it was very hard, very difficult.
I think it was the boot camp that we all needed, though. That if you look back,
Definitely.
I think it was a very important time in our careers that has actually like allowed us to excel to the point where we've got now. And when you were sat in that position and looking over at the network IDS team, thinking that is impossible. And if you look back now, things that we've done, everything starts with logs, and everything in cybersecurity is based on how well you can analyze logs, and that is the skill that we've got. And we applied it for years.
People with manual jobs are gonna kick off when I say this, but that was graft, wasn't it?
It was mental graft.
I have to use upright mouses because of that. My shoulder doesn't. I was leaving work and I'd cycle home like this because of how quickly you'd have to move your mouse onto the different screens to get through the 600 to 1,000 of those cases in one day. Which, if you were doing them responsibly, which I mean, I'm pretty sure we all were. But you could have just saved them as well, and closed them and not even looked at them quickly. But
save and close, what a phrase!
Kind of testament to us not taking the easy option out.
I'm not going to mention any names.
Yeah, we only mention names of good people, eh?
I think if you compare it to graft, if we've got any builders listening, it might not be as hard as lifting. Well, Robbie, what did you used to do? You used to lift Land Rover parts. Was it as hard as that?
Mentally, it was hard.
Yeah, it was a mental game, maybe not physical. I guess.
Yeah,
I worked on roofing. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, unless you got carpal tunnel syndrome from
probably on the way because of it. I worked on a roof in February, and that before getting the cybersecurity, and that made me realize I need an office job.
Josh leaving work after he's just riding around in circles because he's hit his shoulder. I can't get home.
Or AJ used to turn up to work when it was raining with his umbrella out like a lance.
It was the best day I'd go to work. I'd have my red bike, look like Postman Pat bike, and then
Ash used to have his waterproofs as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I had a few waterproofs as well. I was that was my mode of transport, even when it was freezing cold. But I didn't actually cycle that far, which wasn't so bad. But I did look ridiculous because it was like a golf umbrella, so it was pissing it down, and I just looked like basically a tent that's like going down the street. And, it worked though. It worked.
Interested is of time. Yeah, we got coming to the end of it.
Shit.
Vaughn, all you.
Yes. So it started off in that team. And seeing this network security team working a couple rows of computers down, doing the more interesting work, that was always the guiding light I needed, and the natural progression into the quote unquote more technical cybersecurity roles. And that was always where I wanted to go, and I made that very clear to my management and my peers. I was saying, I'm doing all this work, I'm trying to get over to that team, and it's almost that speaking it into existence. That's where you want to go rather than kind of sitting and dwelling on it. Even so much so, I think probably my break into that team was at our Christmas party. I actually went up to the team lead of that team, maybe after a couple too many, and essentially said,
so you may as well.
and essentially said, I want to join your team. What have I got to do to get over there? And just putting myself out there as much as possible to try and get to that better state, essentially. And I think maybe that was around Christmas time, January, February come around, and there was an opening on the team. And because I made myself so open and forward as to wanting to join, the conversation happened with my manager at the time, and thankfully I was put forward to join that team. And yeah, that was a whole new kettle of fish. And to what you're saying, AJ, it is definitely made out to be the most complicated thing in the world. And you'll never be able to do that sort of thing. But getting over there, having some good mentors, it wasn't as difficult as previously identified, I guess. And definitely with the learning and the slow pacing through it, it was a lot easier to pick up than what was originally made out.
Yeah, and I think the skills that you took over from that log analysis team is a lot of it is pattern recognition, isn't it? It's starting to understand what patterns look malicious and which ones don't, and ultimately what does a successful attack look like. And there was a lot of similarities that you could take from the log analysis team and move them over. The way that I saw it, it was just an expanded list of saved views, and these were just new saved views, and I just needed to know how to work them. But again, it goes back to our mentorship thing that you have to have some really good people there with you to teach you to start with. It's not something that you could just pick up. Well, I personally couldn't pick up on my own anyway. Maybe someone else could.
Yeah, and again, moving over to that team, try to find some good mentors. Sam, Jamal, if you guys are listening, thank you for helping me out on that team. Very, very much help, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated. But yeah, moving over, a lot more network-based attacks, Apache Struts attacks, SQL attacks, file upload, web injection, all that sort of thing. And there's definitely where my foundation of this network security, cybersecurity experience was built, and I'll always be thankful for that. One of the main projects that I worked on while in that team, which helped propel me forward in terms of technical skills, is I rebuilt the internal incident response process for that company. So when our customer base got hacked, or they got flagged as one of them being hacked, I worked on a bit of a revamp of the current process that we had as to how we would go in and help support the customer in that situation, in terms of spinning up files and building timelines and bringing response teams together and all that sort of thing. It was very project managery, the kind of bit I worked on. It was a lot of getting different players together, experienced analysts from overseas in the US team and the local team, kind of writing out the standard operating procedure document, gathering everyone's information and opinion on the matter, and then devising this process to help support our customers in that.
Did you decide to do that, or was that something that you were told to go and do? How did that project come about?
Yeah, so speaking with my team lead at the time, he always knew that I was looking for new things to learn, trying to propel myself forward, jumping into any opportunity that I could get my hands on, essentially. And this opportunity come up, and we both thought it would be a really good opportunity for me to not only build my personal confidence in terms of speaking with other members of the company, but also my technical confidence as well. And it really was a great area, because it did require a lot of liaising. And at the time, I probably wasn't the most outgoing person in terms of speaking to other parts of the company. And it definitely did build a bit of glue and social lubricant in that regard to help me in that area. And some of the learnings from that I still carry with me today, which is amazing.
Yeah, fair play. That kind of shows the leadership mentality you already have, because process isn't really fun. Nobody really wants to spend their time defining process. But if you're good at what you do and you're able to really nail it down, the most valuable thing you can do is then document that process and show everyone else that same route to how to get there, because it scales out, because you're only one person, right? But if you can share your process to everyone and give them an easy and consumer way to explore it, you're going to improve your 4x multiplier.
Yeah. So following from that, then I was ready for a change. I had been at this company for 2 years, maybe about 6 to 9 months in the log review team, and then maybe a year and a half in the network security team. While in the network security team, managed to work myself from a level 1 to a level 2 analyst to that professional level, with the help of that incident response process document. I think that response document was done while as a level 1, and that was my evidence, so to say, to get me that level 2 promotion. Spend some time as the level 2 a lot of mentoring. I had quite a few mentees that I was helping and building their knowledge as well. And I took really great pleasure from helping other people build their own journey and guiding them on their journey, which was really fun, and definitely one of the reasons why I looked to move to my next company. And that company was actually with Robbie, a mutual friend of ours. We've already spoken about Dan. He had gone to work at Robbie's company. And this is kind of where I met Robbie and where our stories tie in. So they had an opening for a level 2 analyst, and I was looking to move. So Dan put the word in with Robbie, and that's how I ended up at the second company.
You came at the right time as well, because Dan was, I think he either handed in his notice or he was thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a lot of senior analysts at the company at the time, and having those senior analysts that have the breadth of knowledge that they do is really important when you've got, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 level 1 or junior analysts that sit underneath them in the team. You need that level of escalation, that point of contact for everything that happens on a daily basis for SOC operations, because every day is a school day. Something pops up that you haven't seen before, and we need to adapt, and we need to respond. And yeah, you came in at the perfect time, and Dan had already given me a heads up. I think he might have referred you again, which is super important in this industry. Work with people, network, volunteer, just be a nice person, and you'll get some opportunities off the back of that. So yeah, you came in, and I was over the moon that you joined. And yeah, talk about your experience and some of the things that you did, because I know that I was really grateful for all of the work that you did. I kind of gave you a free role. I said, you can just do whatever you want to do. You make your own projects.
Yep.
You're the point of contact. So if they need help work in the queue, then they'll come to you. There wasn't any expectation to actually work incidents on a day-to-day basis, because that's kind of like a rite of passage, isn't it? It's come in as a junior, promote yourself to a level 1, do your time, get your reps in, get those KPI ups in, and then once you've done that, then the reward is a little bit more freedom. You can focus on service improvements, take a look at really cool and exciting projects, and just be that person of contact for the junior and the level 1. So yeah, maybe talk about the threat hunting process that you again had like a brand new idea to revamp that company.
Yeah, and you mentioned about giving me a bit of freedom when joining, and I definitely felt that after joining. There was a lot of responsibility on me, but not in a bad way, in a freeing way to a degree, because not unsimilar to the last company, I wasn't required to do all of this more monotonous work, which to me personally allows me to be a lot more creative. I like to go off and read things and research different things. So having that freedom definitely sparked my creativity element. And to what you've mentioned, Rob, coming into the second company, one of the first things I identified was the way the threat hunting was being performed at the company. So for anyone that hasn't dabbled in threat hunting very much, there's a concept called the pyramid of pain. And if you haven't researched it, I would definitely recommend, going off and taking a look. But what the pyramid essentially is at the bottom of the pyramid are things such as file hashes, IP addresses, and as you move up the pyramid towards the top, there's things such as tactics, techniques, and procedures in line with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And what the pyramid's trying to do is visualize how much quote unquote pain you're causing to the attacker as you build detection capabilities for these different IOCs and elements. So if you create a detection for a file hash, it's pretty easy. All they have to do is go in the file, change one character, and the file hash is different. Pretty trivial to bypass. Whereas if you're creating detections around tactics, techniques, and procedures in line with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, that's going to be a lot more difficult for the threat actor to change, because then they have to go off and learn a whole new technique altogether. I'm slightly conscious of time as well. So with the threat hunting process, I identified that we was taking a look at what was currently being done was threat hunting based off of these file hashes and IP addresses from security articles and that sort of thing. And immediately, one of my first duties, I call it, when I first joined, was I wanted to revamp the process and try and increase the maturity level of our threat hunting process. So I think it must have been within the first 2 or 3 months, I was drafting up a new document around how to threat hunt using the MicroAttack framework, essentially, with a bit of inspo from some different areas, a lot of research, and yeah, I think after about month 6, it was to the stage where I was teaching the rest of the guys on how to do this and the whole documentation procedure and all that sort of thing. I'm not sure if they're still doing it now. If they are, amazing. Hopefully my name's still on the document, but I'm sure they would have advanced it since then and taken some learnings from any oversights that I made and improved it. But one of the things I do really appreciate that Robbie did well at the company was give me a lot of exposure to the managerial elements. We was very close on a lot of calls, Rob, about, you know, the workings of the company and the building of the SOC and the problems that were being had at the managerial level, and that exposure, which is something that I always wanted to get into, that managerial and SOC lead role, which is where I'm currently at now. And I definitely think a clarinet that's, well, we'll have to beat that out. But at that company is one of the opportunities that I had the most exposure to that, which very well set me up then for my third company.
And if anybody is interested in that threat hunting pyramid of pain, I've not heard about it before. I've just posted the link in our Discord. If you do want to access our Discord, just comment down below and let us know. But yeah, that's really interesting concept. To be fair, I've never heard of that. So
it's great. I use it even just in educational pieces now, because it just shows there's levels of things you can find and do that qualify as threat hunting. But then you want to go after the most valuable pieces, because that's going to have the most biggest payoff and you have the best outcome for whoever it is you're protecting. And there's a great explanation of pyramid of pain. I just want to make sure we pull everyone along with us. So who wants to have a quick definition of threat hunting, what it is and why we do it?
Well, I would say that the main focus of it is understanding the techniques that an attacker does and relaying those techniques within your infrastructure to see if there's any indicators that those attack techniques have happened. I think that is how I would explain it. That it is a little bit more complex, but usually the way that I do it is I will read an article where a recent APT or a recent attacker has performed a certain attack, and then I'll use that information to try and see if I can detect that within the companies that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
this is very great explanation.
Yeah, the SAMs don't come after me, but to simplify it, it's very much a human-led exercise, right? It's the stuff that can't be detected with your automated detections. So call those known threats. If you know what to pick up and look for, they're known. But then attackers, as we discussed, they love to live in the unknown and they want to hide there. And so that requires the human knows and decision-making to go find these things, because they're not suitable for detection, either because we don't know what they are or because they're super noisy. And by that I mean they hide in legitimate activity, and you're going to fire off loads of false positives. So hopefully
you're trying to catch definitely. You're trying to catch the things between the analytical rules that would fire. So for things like new vulnerabilities, there might not be a detection built for it just yet. So threat hunting tries to bridge that gap of finding activity that might not have mature analytical rules built for it just yet.
I think that's my favorite one. Between the rules, hunting for stuff between the rules. I like that a lot.
Hiding between the rules.
That's Josh's next marketing.
Well, I was going to ask him.
Josh.
I haven't written down 5 raises this time. Yeah, you go for that one.
Nice.
It's not really to Vaughan's journey, but anyone got any other suggestions?
I like that. Hiding between the rules.
Hiding between the rules. Yeah.
lurking between the rules.
So we're from that company that we're going to have to bleep out. That's not where you are now, is it? You moved to a different company.
So that was the company I was at before where I'm at currently. After about a year at said second company, I felt like I was ready for a change. I was ready for a new challenge. Got a little bit stagnant, in all honesty. I was doing a lot of mentorship for the guys. I felt they were in a really, really good place. As we spoke to in Robbie's pod, we had gone from a 9-to-5 SOC to a 24/7. So we had gained a lot of great experience from that. And I was just kind of ready for a new challenge. The third company, I kind of fell into by accident. I was interviewing for a company that had a name very similar to the company that I'm at now. And one of the guys that worked at second company with me works at the company I'm at now. So again, a massive push for networking. But I messaged him just saying, I'm interviewing at this company. Is this who you work for? Because the names are very similar. And I wasn't exactly sure. And he said, no, I'm not working at this company. This is the company I work for. Why are you looking? And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a bit of a change. And he actually put me in contact with a recruiter or the team lead for my company now currently, because at the time they were in the process of looking for a senior analyst, which was a step up from where I was at in terms of the level 1, 2, 3. I was going from a level 2 to a level 3, and I was definitely interested. Went through the interview process because of the very great recommendation that Dav, shout out Dav, gave me. Yeah, shout out Dav, absolute legend, still absolutely rocking it now at this third company. For a very, very
3D printing.
He is still doing his 3D printing.
Printing obscure objects.
Yeah, I think he was on Boba Fett helmets, if I don't remember correctly, last time I spoke. But yeah, because of the great recommendation he put in for me, interview was very, very smooth. Done a tiny bit of a tech question sort of quiz, I guess, but because of the really great recommendation that Dav put in for me, it wasn't really trying to pick out the weeds of what I understood. I think they were very confident in the skills that I had. So it was more so just going in for that kind of character interview and seeing if I would fit in the team. And yeah, it went really well. And they offered me a position, which was really, really great. And I was really excited. The company I work for, they're a startup, so it was a lot smaller. But they're a cybersecurity automation startup, which really, really piqued my interest. I didn't mention this earlier, but for my dissertation, I was actually building something using machine learning algorithms. So moving into a company that is automation based was a nice segue for me and something that I was always interested in. And working for more traditional SOCs as well. For anyone that is in the SOC role at the moment, you'll understand how noisy some alerts can be. And a lot of tuning has to take place at times. And while at this second company, I was doing a lot of work around the tuning of these rules and suppression of these rules. And as any analyst knows, it's really annoying seeing noisy rules. So go into a company that has a potential to disrupt with this whole automated analyst working incidents for you was really, really interesting for me. And having the opportunity to go in and kind of contribute and lead that automation approach of how quote unquote automation works incidents was really, really appealing to me.
And we're definitely going to tap into some of that in another time when we get you on the ML AI debates and all the uses sure. or overstatements that might be around those technologies.
But so, we're very close to. Sorry, Josh, go on.
No, I was just going to kick us off. What are you saying?
I was going to say we're very close to present day now. Spent 9 months in the senior analyst role at my third company. Spent a lot of time doing a lot of team leadery sort of tasks. I was doing a lot of mentorship, workshop planning. Again, similar to second company with Robbie, I was very close to the team lead at third company, and he was getting me on board with a lot of these more strategic decisions. Being a startup, it was a lot smaller. It was a lot closer to the ground with the action. So I was very close with like the marketing team and the engineering team and the sales team. And that was really, really interesting for me. And yeah, after 9 months, I was talking to, well, he was the team lead. He moved into the head of operations, and they mentioned about potentially moving me into the SOC lead role. And I made it very clear in my initial interview that that sort of leader managerial area was always somewhere that I wanted to go and wanted to be involved with. And they very kindly helped lay out the path for that for me and give me exposure into these more strategic areas and planning of mentorship and services and company progression. And yeah, we're at present day in that SOC lead role now and absolutely loving it.
Awesome. It's a really interesting blend of skills because I've certainly worked under SOC leads who haven't been that technical, because it's hard to find the blend of the technical skills with the leadership attributes as well. But actually, when you've got both of them, you're almost invaluable. So I can see why they kind of groomed you for that that role, or you groomed yourself, really, didn't you? Doing it kind of
it's
without
always
being asked.
interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe a odd choice of words for me. But,
So it's a nice ending anyway.
yeah, I mean, that brings us on to the edge, and I really don't want that to be the statement that we end on. So have we come up with anything better than the detections between the rules?
No, I think that is the one for
Then
this
there
one.
it is.
I think that's
Yeah,
the quote for me.
Detection
That's
between the
got
rules.
to be the slogan, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I'm going to explain threat hunt to everybody from now on. So
Yeah, that's a
Awesome.
great. Yeah, that's a
As long as
great-
they give me some props, I'm fine with
yeah.
Yeah,
it. Copyrighted.
we'll
Thank
shout
you,
you out on
everyone.
the podcast.
Yeah, good. Thanks everyone for your time today. Thank you guys for listening. You know how to get to us. If you're in the Discord community, then you can come directly talk to us. If you're not, find your way there. Go to empiricaltraining.co.uk and you can come right in, or just use the comment boxes wherever you're viewing this from. Let us know what you liked. We're still early stages of this podcast, so there's a lot of opportunity for us to change the direction, move it on, maybe improve my lighting because I look pretty yellow this one if anyone's watching on the videos. But yeah, thanks everyone. And Robbie, AJ, Vaughan, thank you very much. This is Empirical Training, and we'll see you next time.